doing. We have to keep talking. Like, I want to be informed, but I try not to get so consumed because that's part of it, to feel like, oh,
Mm.
there's always something, there's notification, whatever, and to exhaust us, right? And to make us tired. And it's just like, turn it off, like, be informed. But after that, like, don't get into it because it's meant to kind of make you, to wear you down and beat you up. And it's just like, but it also goes back to art, right?
Welcome to the Creative Navigators.
We are two unlikely friends exploring resistance by examining the intersection of the creative process, productivity culture, and artistic expression.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. And of course, as always, we are the Creative Navigators. And we're really excited today to have a special guest join us in our conversations. Today on the call, we have Niki Lopez. She's a multidisciplinary artist and founder of What's Your Elephant? Thanks so much for joining us, Niki.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, of course. And as always, we have your hosts, me, Obed, and Jordan.
Hello.
All right, so let's just jump into it. So basically on our show, we are basically exploring the intersection of creativity and community. And to that end, I kind of just want to give you a little bit of space to kind of explain or talk to us about kind of like what you do creatively, like what is just a brief kind of intro to the type of art that you do, how you engage creatively, and then we'll just kind of like get into the conversation.
Sure. So I'm a multidisciplinary visual artist, and the shortest answer is everything under the umbrella of creative advocacy. My work, whether it's my personal artwork, whether it's my community outreach and social practice or design, and now the nonprofit it uses art as a form of, you know, um, community building, advocacy, speaking out against different things. A lot of my personal artwork of the past few years have been utilizing mask and mask elements, both literally and conceptually. I talk with my art. I speak some of the. I like to focus on things that people don't normally talk about. Um, and so my current body of work has been building on like some of my healing journey, some of my things that I've been growing in as far as Afrocentric diasporic spirituality, as being a survivor of multiple traumas, and healing and mental health and mindfulness. Um, but also with my social practice and art, I like to interact with the community. I curate art shows, so I'm, bringing different groups of people together to show their work. My focus is art with a purpose, whether it's my personal artwork, the exhibitions that I'm doing, the designs that I'm doing. You know, there is art that, a lot of time when people think of art, they think of purely aesthetics. This matches my couch. I want art that's going to agitate us, that's going to have people think, have people to challenge a social norm. Um, so within those spaces, I create art shows. For example, like with What's Your Elephant? So one of the artists in one of my What's Your Elephant shows a couple of years ago, he had an art piece that was talking about the corruption within the oil industry, right? And he was invited, as a big artist, he was invited to do an exhibition in Texas, and he basically was given threats, right? So there's artists who sometimes, have shared with me that they appreciate being in my art show because they have work that they can't show in other spaces. So if, typical art that may be in one of the shows may be talking about sexual abuse, it may be talking about LGBTQ rights, it may talk about women issues, Black Lives Matters. those different things, as well as interactive pieces, right? So whether it's something where I don't want people to just come and see the art, right? I want them to engage. Sometimes there's usually an interactive piece where I'm asking people to share an elephant for them. Um, so that, so it's not just the public coming in to be a witness, but also to engage, to have a space to share. I do community projects where I'm talking with community, um, bringing in their stories. One of the projects I did for uh, the LA Lee YMCA and Mizell Community Center, when they were opening they had a new building. They've been in the Sistrunk community, which is a historically Black community, for a number of years. And so the project that I did, I was talking to a lot of elders who grew up where, there was a time Sistrunk, and it still has this reputation of being like this bad area. But it was by design, right? And we could go into all the redlining and how the city comes in and they take people's properties and business and all those things. But it used to be a thriving Black community with businesses and families. And there's a lot of changes that went in. So me bringing a community together to talk about, what's important, the history of Sistrunk, and connecting it with artists who created artworks that are permanently displayed there. So I like to use art for storytelling, for, just seeing who we are, how we're different, how we're the same. Um, in with What's Your Elephant, engaging people to talk about uncomfortable things, centering also around mental health, right? So sometimes I may share some of my, journey with art as healing, and the therapeutic and health benefits of art, right? So it's not just, oh, I have a problem, let me do art. Yes, that is a thing, but it's also a form of, it's something you could do to maintain wellness. Sometimes in my classes, I tell people that sitting down, if you feel you can't, sometimes, oh, I can't meditate. I can't sit there and close my eyes and, I might go to sleep. I'm like, well, first of all, if you go to sleep, you need sleep, right? But second of all, if you get a coloring book, right, and you sit there with a coloring book, you get the same benefits, some of the same benefits you do from meditating, because you have to be fully present, you're being mindful, right? So, there's different aspects that I take my art in, either in my personal work or when I'm doing art making experiences and workshops, and bringing in history and culture. Like, some of my work speaks to um, Yoruba practices, Afrocentric, practices. And so it's, for Black people who have been historically, stripped of everything in this Western side of the country and, North and South America, stripped of their culture, their identity, their language, their practices, and all those things. And so even though I could respect anyone's religious choice, for me, I feel people of color need to question and say, okay, what was taken away from us, right? The enslaved, they were being out of their culture and force fed the Bible and other religious things. And we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole with that. But like, what's taken away? So art is, and that's just kind of the short version. But for me, art is a lot of things. It's vital. It's not a secondary. It's not a hobby. It's not, oh, if we have a little extra money, maybe we get a piece of from Walmart or a little, class. To me, art is vital. And I advocate for people looking at art as something that they need in their everyday life, in government, in bringing different people together and using art to discuss all types of things that they normally wouldn't discuss outside of that.
Yeah, great. No, that's wonderful. No, and I can tell, your work is really deeply connected with not just like, bringing people together, but deeply connected in the community that you're working in, and in helping to build that community, and also advocate on behalf of that
Yeah.
community that you're working in. And you kind of mentioned, and now I'm thinking, like, right now currently with the whole like DEI like backlash nonsense that's been happening, like how is particularly like from, corporate sponsors and like the whole pink washing thing and all that stuff, like how does that affect sort of your work, or like the way that you kind of operate in
Um,
in these spaces?
that's such a loaded question, right? Because, the
Yeah, I
thing,
know, right?
um, you know, recently last year, NSU, invited me, Nova, the art museum invited me to be a speaker for Juneteenth. Um, and for the Juneteenth holiday, which is Juneteenth, a little bit of background on Juneteenth, they actually had to send, um, army, they had to send people to inform the enslaved people of Texas that, slavery was over. They didn't even know. So they found out on June 19th. So that's an African American holiday. I'm first generation. I had to learn about it several years ago when I was in an art show about that. And so I was really privileged. But one of the things that I talked about during that was, and they had people from the museum, they had sponsors and patrons and funders, right? And one of the things I focused on in that conversation and in when I'm talking is that and you reference about pinkwashing, right? Like when we support people who say, hey, I support LGBT, is pride, buy this rainbow t-shirt for me. It's February, buy this Malcolm X poster from me. Like, don't just take it at face value. Look, research it, because sometimes we're supporting things with our dollar, with our attention, with our social media. And if we peel back the underlayers, those people are not really supportive of those communities, right? They may want those dollars, but what are they doing in the Black community specifically, right? So there's a difference, for example, between Black ownership or Black initiated and Black targeted. So you have organizations who may do things, say, oh, we have this for Black people, we're diverse, but then that money doesn't trickle in or really support Black initiatives and in their community. And so I'm constantly telling people to research, to look into grassroots, you know, like not just, the system is, sometimes people say the system is broken. It's not broken. It's working how it was intended by our forefathers, right? However, our forefathers, when they sat down to, I wouldn't even want to say our forefathers, the forefathers, right? They didn't see everyone as human, right? They saw Black people as three-quarters human, right? They didn't even see women, women were property. So the system is designed to uphold white male supremacy, patriarchy, and that's it. So when a lot of organizations, especially several years ago with the George Floyd, and they're like, making promises to Black people to really support Black people, Black initiatives, diversity, and all those things, now the masks, in some cases, the masks have fallen off, right? In other cases, they're being pressured. But it's just really challenging because, like, there's a perception with DEI that it's putting Black people who don't deserve it in spaces, right? But statistically, the people who benefit from DEI, top of the people, white CEOs and white women, right? Bottom of the list, Black people. And then, like someone, I was having a conversation with someone and they told me, oh, DEI is a new term. And I'm like, well, the term came out in the 80s, but it was actually from the work that they were doing with the civil rights movement, right? So it's not a new term. A lot of things are impacted by DEI that people are unaware of, right? So you have a country that predominantly voted for a particular person, and they didn't realize they're voting against their own interests. And now they're like, oh my God, I'm losing funding for my farm. I'm losing. So it's just really interesting. And then for me, it's really challenging because what I pride myself in saying that all of my work is purpose driven. My work has always been around centering and uplifting marginalized communities, whether it's LGBT, whether it's women, whether it's Black people, whether it's children, whether it's, specific, trans, just different communities that are normally not in the spotlight. Their issues are not talked about unless it's a holiday, right? Now that when it's a holiday, everybody is, oh yeah, I got a Black friend, right? But when it's not, my thing is when it's not a holiday, when it's a Tuesday at 3 p.m., what are you saying? What do you feel about Black people? What are you saying about LGBT people? What are you saying about trans people? When it's not trending, what are your words, right? And so being very intentional is very important to me. And I try to be that as much as possible with myself. I'm not perfect, right? And I try to advocate and model that and encourage others to do that. And so now with this work, with all these initiatives, people, I mean, DeSantis took out the art budget last year and people were scrambling, right, to try to fix those fundings for the arts. And now DEI, and I saw there was like a list of words that they're trying to remove as it relates to trans people and women and you know, inclusion, diversity, all of these words that they're trying to take out of the government. And it's just really shocking and challenging for me because these are the words and people and organizations and stuff that I try to uplift as much as possible with what I do, with the work I'm drawn to do and encouraging others. And, there's one nonprofit that I know, they literally had an approved federal grant that first it was like, oh, this payment didn't go through because there's a glitch. Now, because of this, they literally have halted the funding for something that was approved. So it's not like, we don't know if we're getting that grant. We got the grant, 3 years of the grant. This is guaranteed money. And now this particular organization, that's a Black-led organization, is not getting access to the funds. However, there's a white organization doing the same work that has gotten those funds, right? So it's already challenging when you're not doing things, that, like, for example, statistically, right? Black-led nonprofits get a fraction of the funding and support than non-Black-led nonprofits get, right? So if you already had that before all this is just going to be exasperating. It's just going to be more, more of that. People are not wondering, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. There's some organizations and companies that are being pressured to remove their DEI, wording, right? So now there's things where, I mean, in one hand, I'm glad that people are, there's like, oh, we got to boycott these things, right? But also like something that I am kind of happy about in this, right? There's always a silver lining that some people are now talking more about how do we support directly Black businesses and targeted businesses, which I feel we should be doing all along, right? So, like, for example, people were talking about Target and Target rolling back DEI and putting on sale some of their Black uh, companies and removing them, right? And I saw a post about it and they're like, oh no. And I said, well, they actually started with gay people last year, right? And so they, because they were threatened about being boycotted because they were such supportive of LGBT, and they had partnerships, they had merchandise and all that, and people were really going to them for that. They pulled that back last year because they were threatened about a boycott, right? And the thing is, people who are non-LGBT and even some LGBT, because I saw one person that I saw would promote their things, obviously had a partnership, didn't say anything, that was a little disappointing, but nobody said anything about it, really, right? We weren't boycotting when it was gay people. But now people are like, wait a minute. And I was like, but that's what happens. If you're not white, male, period, you are somewhere on the chopping block. Best believe it, right? And so it's really scary times in terms of, like, for example, I'm fully independent. I'm, people, oh, what's your day job? It's my passion. This is my purpose. This is what I do. So it's just like, okay, if it was already a challenge getting some funding as a Black, Afro-Latina, gay person, female, whatever have you, how much more challenging is it going to be to get funding for and support for the work, right? So like there's a lot of people who may really love the work once they experience it, but my challenge is getting other people who haven't experienced it to be a part of it. But if I have challenges with funding, with media, or I'm not getting the media coverage that the work deserves, right? How much more challenging is that going to be for me and the causes and the people that I work with and partner with to do those things? So, but it's just like, this is what I do. I can't just say, well, you know what? Let me just go some other route and do something else that is more guaranteed, right? I mean, I'm not like extravagant person. Like, I like what I like, but I'm not someone like, oh, I have to have this because it's this particular brand. So it's just like there's challenges in there, but then also, unfortunately, sometimes people have to feel like the shit hit the fan. Excuse me, well,
Yeah.
they have to feel like, you know, wait a minute, what's going on to get motivated? Unfortunately, some people need that, right? So the good part about those things that there are some people who weren't motivated to take action before who are becoming motivated to take action now. But then it's also this thing like, there's a lot of people who said, hey, 96% of Black people voted a different way, right? So they're like, hey, they have, what is it, FOFA. And to a certain degree, I can understand some of that, right? Because it's like, look, we did what we were supposed to do, and it went beyond um Democrat and Republican, right? It was like this particular administration is going to be focusing on some things that are going to be harmful to a lot of people outside of just, are you Republican, Democrat, whatever. First of all, we need more parties. But anyway, that's a whole other subject.
Yeah.
But the thing is, at the same time, the Democrats, are kind of silent, which is really disappointing. I can understand the voters being upset, Black people, Black women, all those things, right? And it is, rightfully so frustrating. Some people are like, you know what, I need and if you do, I'm not saying if someone's like doesn't have the capacity, they should push themselves, right? But at the same time, those people in those positions who are speaking for people, I feel they should be you know, um, motivated right now. I think that what's the lady name?
Mm.
Crockett. I love all of her stuff, but it's just like, where's the other people that's supposed to be fighting for these things? Like, okay, they may not have won the election, but they still have work to do. But those of us on the ground floor and the grassroots, we've always had work to do. It makes it more challenging in some ways. It's just like, what are we going to do? Like, if people are saying, you know, um I don't want to support these things, or people are going to more side with like, well, I don't want to lose my funding, right? There's organizations who are saying, if you don't remove these things out of your verbiage, we're going to not give you funding. The HBCUs, that there's something I saw the other day where they said there is this prominent Black military academy, and they said a statement that they're no longer going to be checking that academy. And this is not like, oh, if you're Black and want to do the military, this is a good look. It's just like you have to be in a certain level. But it was for, and the thing with DEI, when people, it's like these are people who are qualified, who have normally, now here's the thing with DI, people still were being overlooked, right? There's still, people understand, if you have a Black looking name on a resume, you're less likely to get a call to put your foot in the door to get an interview than if you have a white presumable name, right? And that's with DEI. So imagine how it's going to be without those protections, right? And that you can't sue for certain things, or a gay couple want to get married, and there's a thing a few years ago where that later, and I think the baker didn't want to bake the cake for the gay people, right? And it is just like, unfortunately, is giving people who already had these ideas in their head, these races, is giving them permission to be who they are, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, that person in office is allowing it represents people like who already had prejudices to be like, oh yeah, I could talk about it now, right? But at the same time, and they even did that in slavery days, right, where the poor white people, they empowered them to feel like, hey, at least you're better than a slave, when they were in the same boat. So it's just real, it's scary times in some ways, because just like, like, I don't want to change what I'm saying just because to me the work is still needed to be done, right? There's still things that, and now more than ever, like, there's a
Yeah.
part of me that feels like I want to make sure my mental health is where it needs to be, right? But then I also feel even more motivated to like, what can I do? People are stressed out and bugging out, and I'm just like, okay, let's do some art. Let's do, you know what I mean? And so it's scary times for real, but I feel, those of us who've been doing this work, we're just going to continue to do it as much as possible, but because that's who we are, right? But and we would do it without funding, we would do it without support, we would do it when it's not trending, and so we're going to continue to do that work. And that's my commitment, right? But there's a lot of challenges with that.
Yeah. It is. It's a very challenging environment right now. I mean, it's always been, right? But now it's like hyper hypercharged, and there's a lot of fear and confusion. And with that being, well, I mean, this is something that we kind of talk about a lot, especially of kind of like the limitations of, considering the whole like Target thing, and all these companies kind of like dropping, the DEI thing. It's like we talk about the limitations of like what that kind of work actually can accomplish, or because a lot of these companies, they're doing it for business reasons, not because they actually really believe. There may be people there who, you know maybe they believe, maybe they want to make it be something, but at the bottom line, the C-suite, the executives, all that, they're looking at what is, their profit. They're looking at their bottom line, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it was a business decision to get involved in DEI, as far as like, I mean, even that term, it kind of becomes like a marketing thing. It
Yeah.
becomes, oh, here's a new market, here's a new thing that we can kind of exploit, like you said, for dollars. And so now we're seeing kind of the limitation of what's the term, the I don't know, like social, what is it, like activism, capitalism, something like that.
Um,
We're really seeing the limit of it. And
yeah.
yeah, and I'm also just kind of wondering, like, okay, in that environment, like, how what continues to keep you like motivated to continue creating the work that you do? Like, what actually keeps you like motivated in that
I think
challenging environment?
what gets me into this work in the first place, right? I have a I mean, it's so interesting. One of my friends called me one time. They sent me a message, and some people that we grew up with, right? I have a pretty interesting and challenging background, to say the least, right? So she has said she bumped into some people who we grew up with as children. And so my name came up. And so some of these people who haven't seen me in like over 20 years, right? And they're caught up in some of those challenges, somehow they're not surprised of the work that I'm doing, right? Because they feel like this is who she's always been, right? So I've always had a thing for the underdog, for the social justice, for people who are wronged, who are not seen. So that's just always been me, as well as even with all of these things, right? I feel like if I could see, like, not everybody has the ability to see certain things, and not everybody has the ability or the capacity to do something, right? So those of us who can see, who can do, who can model, like, we have to continue doing. Right now it helps to be in community of others of those, because sometimes I might be tired. I'm like, Obed, like, I can't even do Friday. I need a rest. Can you get Friday? I'll be back on Saturday, right? We need that within each other. But the thing is, like, some of the things that we need, I feel I've been saying all along, like, don't just support big corporations and big organizations because you're familiar with them. Because a lot of time, these big businesses and organizations and big nonprofits, they're just passing money back and forth, right? Hey, I got a gala. I'm gonna send you 20,000. Your gala, you send me, back for 10,000. But then they're not the ones actually doing it. And a lot of times the work actually gets lost, right? And so to me, and there are some organizations who are doing those work. But to me, even before this, I've always felt like organizations need to be empowered and connect and intentionally go after and connect and collaborate with grassroots organizations and independent people who are actually knocking on doors and physically doing that work, right? And there's still things that could be done. For example, when people are saying, wait a minute, we don't have, Target doesn't, and I'm just using Target because people are, that's kind of one of them. They're not the only ones, right? But let's say, for example, people like, because now people are threatening and have already started not using Target, um, to the point where their stockholders are suing Target for trying to roll back the DEI because they feel this is going to impact my pockets. Not that it's not the right thing to do, it's impacting their pockets. But there's power in that, right? We have power in what we could spend our money to and give intentions to, attention to. And so to me, I want to be able to motivate people to continue and do even more, shop local, shop small, shop, spend money independently. There's some things we can't do. It's harder to do, right? A small business can't really compete with Amazon, but at the same time, you know, Amazon has a lot of nefarious practices of why they got into those positions, right? And if we start intentionally supporting small businesses or businesses directly, there's a lady who said her friend had a product in Amazon, not Amazon, Target. That product made Target $270,000. That creator of that product got 5,000, right? So when you think, oh, I don't want to not go to Target because I want to support the creator, they're getting pennies for what they're making Target versus go find them directly and start to build those things up, right? So I feel like I can't just lay down and not do anything. I can't just lay down and not do anything because that's not who I've ever been, right? It doesn't matter if, the money is not looking right. Of course, yeah, when the money is there, great. The work that I got to do and the money to support the work that I got to do and support me doing the work, absolutely amazing. But even without those things, I'm still doing the things that I do to my last breath because that's who I am. So, to me, I can't see me not doing the work just because of this, because to me, these problems are not new problems. They're just being highlighted right now, right? So I was not afraid to do the work with the problems that existed. So I'm not going to be afraid to do the work now that some people are finding out. The same way some people are like, oh, this country's not racist. And then with the George Floyd, well, maybe we are. No, we like, no, the lynching stops. No, they didn't, because now that people have videos, right? Oh, now maybe we are. Maybe there is a problem. We've always had a problem, right? But it's just, and it's from the origins of how this country was even formed. Like, we're on stolen land, right? So, like, I just always want to advocate for the global majority, right? I want to advocate for the marginalized people to like don't feed into the fact of we are powerless, right? Like, I heard something earlier today. There was a conversation, a quick sidebar, right? This Black lady was saying how because Black people are so are, is going to make something out of, you give us scraps, we're going to make some fried shrimp and whatever, like we're going to make something out of it, that people think that, not having is easy. It's hard, but the thing is, if we've always been doing it, we're going to continue to do those things. So I think that, you know, um, not to just feel like it's dismal, it's hopeless. It's not hopeless, right? This is time to really focus on who are the other advocates, who are the other people who say, like, we're not laying down easily. Like, okay, you may have this, but we're still going to do that, right? And because there's power in those things, there's power in numbers. Even if the 1% is 1%, right? We're still the 99, right? So they may have one person have trillions, millions of dollars, but there's still a lot more of us. And it's long, and so there's always going to be that possibility that we can unify more than we have been, right? There have been people who are unifying, and then there's some people there, you know, they're not ever, right? There's a joke saying, like, don't argue with someone, Harriet would have shot, right? Because there's some people who's like, yeah, we got to get out this house. And some people like, no, Massa only beats us on Tuesday. I got his scraps. This is good, right? So
Oh,
unfortunately, with everything that you're advocating for, there's going to be people that fall in that helps to uplift, right? There's Black people who help to uplift white supremacy and keep it in place. There's Black people with power and false roles that helps them to keep those things in place. But for the rest of us, right, we still got to keep doing. And I just, that's the only thing I could say. We have to keep doing. We have to keep talking. Like, I want to be informed, but I try not to get so consumed, because that's part of it, to feel like, oh,
mm,
there's always something, there's notification, whatever, and to exhaust us, right? And to make us tired. And it's just like, turn it off, like, be informed. But after that, like, don't get into it, because it's meant to kind of make you, to wear you down and beat you up. And it's just like, but it also goes back to art, right? I've
yeah,
been doing these art experience and mindful experience and talking about the health benefit of art and how that could help, especially in times like this, right? You could sit down, you could write a song, you could draw something, you could color, you could click. It doesn't have to be something you have to sell that looks perfect, right? The act of doing that gives you and your body and your nervous system and your soul and your spirit that sense of calm, or just being in that moment, right? Because the thing is, when you're in this place of angst and anxiety and where you can't think straight, and that's by design, right? So when we have these things, when we could get into breathing, when we could get into art and art practices and mindfulness and calmness, then we could say, what's the next step for me, right? What's the next step for my organization?
yeah. Picking up on that thread, which that was great. Very thorough answer as usual. But picking up on that thread, so as an artist who deals with, you deal with a lot of like complicated, heavy subject matter oftentimes, and with your work is very much geared toward like, you're you're talking about different issues, social issues of social justice, of race, sexism, queerness, all these like very thoughtful, heavy subjects. And as an artist who creates in that space, like how, like you were just saying that art can also be healing. Um, how do you trying to figure out? I'm thinking about like
So I do to,
how do you heal it? Like how do you like kind of step back when it becomes like a lot or like even approaching burnout? Like how do you does doing different type of art kind of help you with that, or do you even just do let me
you
not
know,
do anything creative related?
I advocate, but I also try to practice it, and sometimes I have to be
Mm,
reminded right, about it, right? So for me, uh, if I don't have to be somewhere, I'm home, right? If I don't have to, and there are times where I literally like shut off everything, light some incense. I have a record player and a Bluetooth. I got my, whatever, or sometimes just total silence, right? And I'm on my couch and enjoying my ceiling. You know, I have a son, and every other weekend or so he goes by his dad, right? And so sometimes I'm like, where are you going? I don't even have a plan, right? I just want to have that silence and that peace. And so sometimes, and it's not like all the time, oh, I know what to do, right? Because sometimes I get caught up in it. And thankfully, sometimes I may have a friend, hey, let's go for a walk. Let's go to the beach. So some of the things that I like to do, and sometimes I have to remind myself or be reminded to do, right? I love to go to the beach. I love to, I go to the beach. I want to sit there. I want to like take some deep breaths and ground. Um, I like to listen to music. Um, I like to be in silence and not do anything. I mean, I get, I'll get my blanket, I get all the stuff, and sometime I may sketch. I have a 6-year-old, well, she just turned 7. I have a 7-year-old niece, and she's kind of like the little budding artist. So when she comes here, 8 out of 10 times the child wants to paint, not just color or do it. She wants to paint specific. She wants to paint, she wants to be in clay, and I dare not tell her no to a paintbrush. So sometimes when she's doing art, I'm like, you know what, let me sit down and I do these doodles. Like, it's interesting. My art currently doesn't have, like, I do it has one look, right? But I have these, like, what I call doodles in color, where I'm just doing all these line patterns, and I kind of get really into it and just let myself go, or I just play in the clay. um so a few years ago, I did some training in mind body medicine, and learning about, shaking and tapping and soft belly breathing. um I'm with a group, Diversity in Aquatics. I've been on pause a little bit with the swimming, but I've adult learned to swim. But definitely, I love to go to the beach. I love to touch the water. I love to sit there. I love to be in nature when I can. A few years ago, I started learning to be a plant mom. Several years ago, if you gave me some cactus, I could probably kill it. but but
Yeah,
today,
sounds like me.
yeah, what I'm saying? A friend gave me an orchid several years ago, and I'm just like, oh my God, I know they meant the nicest thing by this, but that orchid is gonna die. But that was like, wait a minute, a couple years later, I still had the orchid. I mean, now it's, really gone, but I have plants, you know, I recently got back, when I was a child, I used to love puzzles. And a few years ago, I bought a puzzle, didn't touch it. And then Christmas, I was like, you know what? Let me whip out this puzzle and revisit, something I used to like as a child, because, I kind of joke sometimes that, damn, I can never just have a hobby that doesn't turn into a form of advocacy, right? Like, so I'm learning to swim. I'm diversity in aquatics. so um, so I'm just like, what is something that I cannot absolutely turn into a project or a mission or something? And also too, because I was going through some challenges, like, right, so, like, for example, we were talking about a little earlier, one organization that I had a contract doing some content for them, and they're 100% grant funded. The grant was cut in half, and man, we can't keep having you do this work, right? So I took a significant loss in that contract. That was a monthly contract for me, and someone who's independent, that's a huge deal, right? So at the time where I was just going through, like, oh my God, I this
Yeah,
this
stress.
funding source got cut before I could replace the funding source. That was big for me. And I was just felt like, and then all these things was, coming up, and I was just like, you know what? I am so stressed out. Fuck it, I'm gonna do a puzzle. And I challenged myself, because I'm like, when I'm doing these art classes, I do this art class with this transitional home, right? And I tell them, like, whatever problem you have, check it at the door. It will be there for you when you leave. Right now, we're just fully present in this moment. And it's just like, how can I be that for me? Right? Because I still have those problems, right? But at least I'm taking some time to focus on this puzzle, because those problems are still going to be there. And I tend to overthink, and I'm like, I get caught in my head at times, right? And so for me, it was really helpful to, with all that going on, and the uncertainty, and losing a contract, and to say, you know what? I'm going to unapologetic, because the thing is, I could take a break, but I can't even enjoy the break, right? So it's just like, I'm not going to break. I just keep working. But I'm gonna unapologetically sit down and work on this puzzle. I was hoping the kids would get, because I have my nieces and nephews. They were like, "Oh, what is that?" You know, Now, I don't know why I picked a 1,000-piece colorful puzzle with a lot of patterns, but I did. But, and I got through it. And someone said, I put it on my story, and some lady was like, wait, someone I knew, I love puzzles. I got to come over. So now we have like a puzzle going, right? One puzzle
I
was
love
finished.
it.
Now we have another puzzle. And she's like, what are you doing? Right.
I
So,
love it.
yeah, so I would say doing puzzles. Sometimes I may do some stretches, breathing, art, and I try to, especially being an artist, right? Because sometimes if, let's say for a sip and paint, when I have attended them, right? The moment someone knows you're an artist, oh man, what I'm like, no, I'm here just enjoying. I'm not here to do a masterpiece, whatever have you.
Uh,
But even myself, sometimes I have to remind myself, I could do art and enjoy art for the sake of doing art and enjoying art and not to make a piece, not to make a
right.
thing that especially because a lot of my work has so many deeper meanings, right? And like even when someone, oh, you could be in this festival, I'm like, I don't have the art that's like this goes well with my couch. Right. I have a piece that's talking about sexual abuse and, I mean, not only, right. So it has all these heavy meanings. So sometimes pushing myself to just do art and play and just like this has no meaning, this is just lines, it's just having some time with my niece is really helpful and therapeutic.
Mm.
Taking a nap when I can. I mean, I just was like, I miss taking naps in the daytime. I got to get back to that. You know what I mean? So trying to do that, having a bath and, and I can't just get in the water, right? I got to clean the bathroom. I got to get the candles. I got to get some essential oils and my music and a water and a wine glass. Cause why would you drink water in a regular glass? And I had to set up a whole thing.
Exactly. I mean, I ask myself that every day. So,
Yeah, but those are things to kind of
yeah.
like ground myself and calm myself, and also to kind of like release, whatever I got to release. Sometimes I journal, not all the time, right? I would love to do it more, but I try to do those things.
Mm, that's great. Yeah. No, I love that you talk about your art that kind of deals like how you mentioned with like a lot of meaning, a lot of heavier meanings that it's not a surface level thing, but then you can also use art not just to express like a really, complicated thought and engage people, but also just as a practice itself that can be itself healing and therapeutic just from the process of doing it, where it doesn't really have like a purpose or anything. That's
Yeah.
something that I'm always like thinking about. And so I know you do a lot of work with, for instance, like the classes, and so you must work a lot with people who are not necessarily artists, professionally, or uh, maybe they could be from all different backgrounds, right? Because I know you do with the masks and all that. Um, so I guess we're a few more wrapping up almost, but I wanted to know what you think about, or maybe what something you could express to someone who maybe is not an artist but is interested in pursuing some sort of creative practice, either just for themselves or even just getting into it professionally. Like what any words that you might have to
Say
express
to
to them or
jump
share
in,
with them.
for like probably 13, 14 years, I do some teaching art residencies with like children with disabilities or the DJJ. And like I said, I did this class with this people, residents of this transitional housing. I do art making workshops and of all ages. And I love telling people, I said, oh, that's what you get, especially from the adults or elders, right? I can't do art, right? So one, I like to have things that sometimes that are abstract and bring, like, hey, let's talk about patterns and colors and, those things. But I'm like, okay, are you physically able to hold a pen or a pencil? Because if you're not, okay, you can get some help, right? But if you can hold a pen or pencil, you in fact can make art. Also, that there is no wrong answer in art. Also, you don't have to draw a photorealistic person to consider it art, right? It could just be something that's meaningful for you, right? So I try to release those like barriers that people have on those arts, whether they're kids. And I say, there's people who are making money doing doodles, right? They're doodling black and white marker and they just got paid to do a mural, right? So it's just the act of doing art. And I really stress the therapeutic benefits of doing art. There was something with American Heart Association. They do for women's health in February. Is like Women Wear Red. It's about heart health and women's health, right? And I was invited because the person said they have everything but they're missing the arts, that component, and I want to bridge that gap, right? So I made some custom coloring pages for them, and I had this canvas piece and I said, draw something, write something, even that, right? There's a lady who was like, oh, I can't do art. And I said, are you religious? Are you, oh yeah, do you read the Bible? Oh, yes, yes, yes. I love the Bible, right? Okay, cool. Do you have a verse? Do you have a word, something that you really feel drawn to? Oh, absolutely, right? She rattled off a few words. Okay, let's take that word, right? We're going to write that word on that paper. Okay, I wrote it. Now we're going to take another color, right? And put it on that paper. Now we're going to take another color, put some dots, right? Now we're going to put some lines, right? Maybe if you want to use a ruler, right? And then at the end of the session, she was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing piece, right? That she told me she was trying to argue me down that she could not do art. So just start there with what you have, right? Everybody has a pen or a pencil or access to that, right? A piece of paper, a cardboard, and just do a line, right? That's the first step. Get something in your hand that you could make a mark with, make said mark. You're on your way.
Um, yeah, just being resourceful, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, George, did you have any other uh questions, comments, anything you wanted to add in?
No, I've been taking copious notes because it'll help when I go to put the thing together. I really appreciate going back a couple of topics. One of the things you mentioned was like being more critical about where you're spending your money and kind of divesting from the big corporations and supporting local artists and especially like black owned or indigenous owned or queer owned businesses. So I was just kind of wondering if you could speak to more about like how you could find local artists or connect with local artists. What are some resources or different ways you found to really connect with more of those like grassroots local artists?
There's different ways, right? So, well, I'm a curator, so I do art shows and things like that. And I like to, put out calls and I can get to know artists in that way and go to things, right? But I think if someone who's not familiar with any artists, I would say, let's say for social media, okay, we're in Broward County, right? Look up, use a hashtag, Broward Art, like whatever your county is, and put art with it and see what comes up for you. If there's festivals, a lot of times if there's a community festival or some type of event going on, oftentimes they want to have, a booth that may have a local artist selling art, or they may have, you know, or doing a live art, right? So I think when, going to things, so not just, and to your point, it doesn't have to be, I have to go to a museum to see art, because oftentimes they're not showing local artists anyway. It's someone who's already dead, they can't use that money, right? Or they already have enough, like not say, they already have their thing, right? But to be intentional, like, maybe check out art schools in your area, right? So if you have art schools, there's artists, potential artists, budding artists of all sorts going to that school. Sometimes they may advertise, hey, there's a drink and draw here. So you on social media, if you're in a city, put in, the city artists and see what you find, and, and go from there. Um, different counties usually have like a cultural council. Like, we have Broward Cultural Division, there's Miami Cultural Division. So you could go to your city's website, and look to see if they have a cultural council. And even then, right, you're not going to get all the artists, right? Because the artists who know about that is going to go, right? So like, look up all those things. Sometime, let's say if there's a civic association, they may know of some artists or they do some things, or even and not just like, let's say if you're looking for visual arts, right, and you see a performing artist, you could sometime ask them, hey, I'm looking to get more into arts, do you have any art friends, right? Because a lot of times creatives know other creatives, right? So we could refer people. But I think getting more involved with what's going on in the community at the local level, if there's a school play, and things like that, festivals, fairs, they're going to have some type of art representation. You could Google it, put in your city, or wherever you're at, and put in art, and see where that could land you. And there's a lot of pockets of different levels of art. So there's always going to be art out there for you. There's art at every level. There's people that give away. I mean, on Facebook, I think they still have it. There's a group called like Free Art Miami. Um, and so artists are in that group, right? And let's say, for example, especially like artists that may have, stickers or prints and all those things, right? So they'll post in the group a picture of where that they left the art, right? So whoever finds it gets that free art, right? So, and that's just one group. So you could actually search on social media for like free art in your city or your state or your whatever have you, and see what you could find. Asking other artists, asking other, as well as, sometimes other organizations that may not have nothing to do with arts, right? At some point, they have probably contracted, commissioned an artist, right? So if you feel like, well, I don't go to any of those things, but I'm involved in the nonprofit world, right? That nonprofit world has some type of event that they're asking artists for donations for our fundraisers. So they know some artists, right? Um, and I would also say to try to go directly to that artist as much as possible, because a lot of times when people are using artists, they don't always value the artist, they're not giving the artist, or if they do give them $100, best to believe that organization got 5,000 or more, right? But they gave the artist $100, and the artist was so hungry, right? I had oodles and noodles yesterday, oh my god, I got $100. That organization, I mean, at one point I was just like, I would sometimes, now I'm a little bit more selective of who I like would donate a piece to. And even still, I'm like, okay, you're not getting 100%, right? We could do a split or something like that. But there was a time where more of my art was selling from me donating it to a cause, and they're selling it for a fundraiser than directly to me, right? So going to those places, doing the research, and try to, connect with those artists directly, because you're going to get a better deal. The artist, if you're buying a piece of art, the artist has a better chance of making more of whatever that you're giving to them. And a lot of times the artists, they're like, oh, you paid me. Okay, now I could eat. I could afford that paint to make more art. Right. Yeah. So it's really important. And there's just a real quick sidebar, right? There's actually a connection, and Fort Lauderdale have experienced this, right? So there's an actual connection when art and artists are in an area that in 10, 20 years, that area blows up. So for example, I'm in an art building that's like this organization that does affordable housing for artists, right? And they research, right? So they knew 30 years ago that Fort Lauderdale was going to blow up. So what happens is artists come in the community, they're painting, they're struggling, they put in their little wares, here's a little art pop-up. A lot of cities have art walks, right? And then, developers, there's a connection where developers start coming in, they gentrify the area, they put up actual, storefronts. Now the artists can't afford to be in those places, and they get ousted of those areas. But it starts with the artist. The broke ass artist in your neighborhood is the reason why your neighborhood gets put on the map at some point, which is unfortunate. So it's really important that people who have the capacity to spend money with art, to go ahead and find an artist and spend that money with them.
I agree. Yeah, thank you. That's super informative. And I think we're coming up on time. I don't want to keep you too much, but I just want to say, Niki, this has been a really lovely conversation, and I'm really glad that you're able to be our first guest on our show. Um, just, I guess, let us know your socials, where we can find you online, and what do you have going on?
Okay. So on Instagram, for example, my main account is Niki Lopez 19. So with one K, Nikilopez 19. I also have an Instagram dedicated for my nonprofit, What's Your Elephant? I also have a Instagram dedicated for my design company, Niki Lopez Creative. So if you put in Niki Lopez, you'll either hashtag Niki Lopez, hashtag Niki Lopez presents, hashtag What's Your Elephant. You're gonna find my pages on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, Niki Lopez 19. I'm on LinkedIn. I have pages for my design company and What's Your Elephant. My main websites are nikilopez.art and what'syourelephant.org. And people could also, it's a nonprofit, it's a 501c arts and education nonprofit. So definitely donate to that. It is tax deductible. And there's a way, I also have a Patreon account. So I'm kind of new with Patreon. As an artist and independent person, is really important to try to create sustainability, right? To keep doing the things, because we'll do the things hook or crook, but I'd rather have bill paid and do the things. So I have a Patreon account which is Niki Lopez 19 as well, where people could sign up to become patrons of my work. So they could choose anywhere between the lowest is $5 a month to like $11 a month. There's also some sponsorship opportunities, and that helps me to do the work, right? So that's the other thing too that I try to tell people, that if you don't have the capacity to do it, but you have the funds, fund the people that's doing the work, right? So people could donate to my Patreon. I have Cash App and Zelle. That just helps me to keep lights on and also to do the work, right? Because sometimes sometimes I'm hired to do, like, let's say an art class, and they have a really unrealistic budget for the materials, and I'm going to go into my pockets or try to make it happen anyway. So when people donate to me, it helps me to keep doing the things. I also have artwork for sale, not all of it, but I do have some works. I have prints. I have a What's Your Elephant t-shirt. So I'm going to do an art exhibition. I haven't put it out there yet, sometime in July. Right now, I currently have a mindful mask making experience with Niki Lopez that's coming up. That's going to be March 6th. So I'm just starting to put it out there because, organizations, they hire me, they contract me to create art workshops for their, group. But I'm starting to do them, for myself, and to put it on there, because then, I'm not like just waiting on someone to say, hey, can you come do this here? So I've started to do, this is going to be my second one. And so those tickets, they're $40 a person or 70 for two. If someone's on my page, if they're paid Patreon, there's a discount code there. So I do have that workshop, and we're going to be making some art. We're going to make masks. And I do like to do different experiences. So it's just like, it covers the art supplies, it covers some light bites. But let me see. I'm on I just recently started to be on Fanbase, which I'm really excited. It's a Black-owned social media. To my knowledge, it may be the only Black-owned social media. Isaac Hayes' son is the one who started that. So, I'm there
Wow.
as well in Blue Sky. So if you look up my name, you'll pretty much find the different social media platforms that I'm on. And I do graphics and content and consulting and cultural programming. So sometimes I produce my own programs, and sometimes I collaborate or get hired to do programs. My last one, which was a really huge one, was with Children's Services of Broward, and I created I created a part. It was a partnership between me, What's Your Elephant, and CSC Broward. It was Echoes of Empathy, looking at the impact of art. I'm not sorry, looking at the impact of the Baker Act to children and families when they remove a child because of a mental health, to kind of sedate them or whatever, and looking at that. So
I
I'm
saw that show.
constantly
I was at
doing
the
things.
opening. It was great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I do, art. I do art and conversation. I do workshops. I curate art. Sometimes I show art. I have to sometimes remind myself, wait a minute, I'm not just a curator. I have work. So sometimes I remind myself to like apply to different art shows so I could put my art in different shows. So I don't have an art show currently right now, but in the summertime, I'll have an exhibition. And I
Nice.
have a mailing list. So if you go to my Instagram, there's a link tree and there's several links. You could get to my YouTube channel, which is also Niki Lopez 19. So I have YouTube. I'm pretty, because that's another way, especially is affordable, right? I can't afford marketing and PR and all those things. So social media has been really important in my work as an artist and independent contractor and designer and What's Your Elephant, to engage the community and connect to community. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
All right. Thank you. Again, thanks so much for being with us today. And
Yes,
yeah, looking forward to all of your future work, and good luck with everything. Thanks so much for joining us.
absolutely. Thanks for having me. And it was an honor. I didn't realize I was going to be the first one, but I remember you talking about it. I'm just like, oh yes,
Yeah.
just do it, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
No, yeah,
I
no, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I had a podcast, The Circle. Been on hold, but you can find the episodes on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. But I'm just really excited when you're saying, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing this," right? The same thing, like, "Hey, whatever you got, put it out there, grow from there." I'm just really excited, because a lot of time we hold things in our heart and we have that itch to do something. And I just feel like if something that's your calling, right? If something comes in your head,
Oh, yeah.
whether you want to call it God, Allah, Jehovah, whatever you want to call it, it's universe, whatever name is going to be comfortable. There's something in there. And I feel that people should explore that, right? And not wait to be perfect, not wait to learn. Like, there's something there, put it out there, because look, you have someone else who come in and say, hey, yeah, let's do this. And it's just it's amazing, and I can't wait to see how it develops.
Me too. I'm excited. And yeah, no, I have to thank you because you were very encouraging, and I feel like that really put the bug in my ear to really be like, all right, let's try to really do this with Jordan, because we've been at this for like a good while, right? Before we actually finally started putting stuff out late last year, I guess now, and early this year. So yeah, no, it's good. You just got to do it. You just got to go for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking this journey with us. How are you creatively expressing yourself this week? We're gathering a community of creatives, so join us in our Discord or connect with us on social media. You can find all of the links below.